It was the backbone of Britain's bombing campaign, a titan of the skies that rained destruction on enemy targets. But behind its legendary status lies a darker truth, one of danger, sacrifice, and sheer terror. This is the Avro Lancaster, a marvel of engineering that pushed its enemies and crew to their limits. What made it so feared? Welcome to Historical Digs, where we explore the untold stories of history's greatest machines. The Avro Lancaster, a war machine unlike any other. In the darkest days of World War II, Britain needed a weapon that could turn the tide against the Axis powers. Enter the Avro Lancaster, a formidable bomber that redefined aerial warfare. More than just a plane, it became the backbone of Britain's bombing strategy, striking deep into enemy territory with deadly precision. With its ability to fly long distances and carry massive payloads, it was the Royal Air Force's answer to the growing demands of modern warfare. But behind its reputation as an engineering marvel lay the stark reality of its terrifying missions and the incredible risks those who flew it faced. Before we dig deeper into the Avro Lancaster, hit that like button and subscribe to Historical Digs. Your support helps us bring untold stories from history back to life. A beast of burden. What set the Lancaster apart from other bombers of its time? Power and payload. Armed with 4 mighty Rolls-Royce Merlin engines, it roared through the skies at speeds of over 280 miles per hour. Fast for a heavy bomber. But its real advantage was its bomb bay. The Lancaster could carry up to 22,000 pounds of explosives for 1,550 miles. It was one of the few aircraft that could deliver the colossal 12,000-pound tall boy and 22,000-pound Grand Slam bombs designed to obliterate heavily fortified enemy positions. This versatility made it a weapon of choice for some of the most daring operations of the war. More than just a machine. To the men who flew it, the Lancaster was more than just an aircraft. It was their lifeline. It symbolized resilience and hope despite overwhelming odds. Each mission demanded extraordinary courage. Pilots, gunners, and bombardiers worked in unison, knowing survival was never guaranteed. The roar of the engines, the icy chill of the high-altitude flight, and the ever-present threat of enemy fire made every sortie a battle against death itself. The Lancaster carried the weight of war not just in bombs, but in the stories of those who fought and fell with it. The harsh realities. A battle against the elements. Flying a Lancaster wasn't just about dodging enemy fire. It was a brutal test of endurance. Crews embarked on grueling 10-hour missions at altitudes exceeding 20,000 feet, where the air was thin and temperatures plunged to a bone-chilling -40 degrees. Inside the unpressurized fuselage, frost formed on every surface, and exposed skin could freeze within moments. Despite wearing thick flight suits and electrically heated clothing, many airmen suffered from frostbite when their gear malfunctioned. The bitter cold wasn't just uncomfortable, it was life-threatening. If an engine failed, or a bomber had to fly with an open window for better visibility, the crew faced an even harsher fight against the elements. At such extreme altitudes, the lack of oxygen was another invisible enemy. Crews relied on oxygen masks to stay conscious, but these could freeze or malfunction mid-flight. Hypoxia, oxygen deprivation, set in quickly, causing dizziness, confusion, and even unconsciousness. A mistake, like forgetting to switch oxygen tanks, could be fatal. Even those who remained alert had to endure excruciating headaches and exhaustion, pushing their physical limits just to complete a mission. Bomb aimers, gunners, and pilots all fought against the creeping effects of hypoxia, knowing that if they faltered, the entire crew could be doomed. living with death at every turn. For the men aboard, the psychological toll was just as brutal as the physical one. Each mission was a gamble with death. Statistics show that a Lancaster crewman had a worse chance of survival than an infantryman storming the beaches of Normandy. The odds were terrifying for a bomber crewman. Overall survival rate was less than 50%. Average life expectancy was around 14 to 20 missions before being killed, captured, or seriously wounded. A full tour consisted of 30 missions, but few completed it. Every time the call came for another bombing run, the men strapped in, knowing they might not return. They witnessed the horrific fates of comrades, bombers erupting into fireballs, gunners blown from their turrets, or friends disappearing into the darkness, never to be seen again. The weight of these experiences crushed many under the strain of constant fear and loss. A gunner's nightmare. Recalling a particularly harrowing mission, one tail gunner described how his electrically heated suit failed mid-flight. At 20,000 feet, the temperature inside his turret dropped to lethal levels. Within minutes, his fingers froze to the turret controls, rendering him unable to move. As he lost feeling in his limbs, his only hope was that the mission would end before frostbite took its toll. When the Lancaster finally landed, his crew had to pry him free from the turret, his hands still locked to the guns. Facing enemy threats. A nightmarish path through enemy defenses. Flying deep into German territory was a perilous undertaking for a Lancaster cruise. The night sky was a battleground, filled with relentless dangers that turned every mission into a test of survival. Anti-aircraft flak erupted from the ground, forming a deadly barrier of fire designed to rip through the bombers before they reached their targets. High-powered searchlights swept the darkness, their beams crisscrossing in search of enemy silhouettes. But the greatest threat often came from above, the night fighters. German aircraft like the formidable Messerschmitt Bf-110 prowled the skies, waiting to ambush unsuspecting bombers. Fast, heavily armed, and designed for hunting in the dark, these twin-engine predators made every mission a deadly gamble. Lancaster crews relied on sharp reflexes and their gunners' defensive fire, but the Bf-110 was relentless. Once locked onto a target, it could close in swiftly, unleashing devastating firepower that left bombers with little chance of escape. For the men aboard the Lancasters, every encounter with a night fighter was a life-or-death struggle. Pilots threw their aircraft into desperate evasive maneuvers, while gunners raked the darkness with tracers, hoping to drive off their attackers. But against a determined Bf-110, survival often came down to a mix of skill, luck, and sheer determination. Close calls that defy the odds. Despite the overwhelming threat of flak, searchlights, and night fighters, some crews survived against all odds. One such pilot recalled an encounter that left him with a story for the ages. A flak explosion struck his Lancaster during a routine raid, ripping through its wing. Fuel began spilling out, and the aircraft was left limping through the night, crippled but still in the air. The crew fought against the odds, dealing with fire risks, engine failure, and fuel leaks. Miraculously, they managed to nurse the aircraft back to base, though it was clear that they had cheated death by mere seconds. This was the harsh reality of flying a Lancaster during World War II. One wrong move, one stray shell, and the mission could end in catastrophe. While some returned safely after these harrowing encounters, many others didn't. For those who survived, the psychological and physical toll was immense. The constant threat of enemy fighters and flak took its toll on the crew's morale, especially after close calls like these. Roles and responsibilities. The navigator, a silent guide in the dark. The navigator hid in the dimly lit cockpit. He worked tirelessly, mapping out precise flight paths with only a compass, a few instruments, and sheer determination. He operated under immense pressure. One miscalculation could lead the crew off course, directly into enemy fire, or worse, leave them lost over occupied territory. With no GPS or sophisticated technology to rely on, he constantly updated their position while turbulence rattled the aircraft, flak exploded outside, and exhaustion weighed heavy on his mind. The fate of the entire crew rested on his ability to get them to the target and safely back home. The bomb aimer. Lying flat in the nose of the Lancaster, the bomb aimer had one of the most crucial jobs on board. With a clear, unobstructed view of the ground below, he was responsible for releasing the bombs with pinpoint accuracy. But this vantage point came at a cost. He was incredibly exposed. Flak bursts and enemy fire shattered the glass around him, sending deadly shards into his compartment. His hands had to remain steady, his mind focused, even as the aircraft shuddered under attack. If he failed, an entire mission could be wasted. He knew that every target hit meant a step closer to ending the war, but also the destruction of cities and lives. The weight of that reality never left him. The ball turret gunner. The Avro Lancaster was a formidable heavy bomber, but its survival depended on the skill and firepower of its gunners. Armed with .303-inch Browning machine guns, these positions were the crew's only defense against enemy fighters. At the nose of the aircraft, the front turret housed two .303 Brownings, enclosed in a perspex canopy. The gunner had limited mobility, but was crucial for defending against head-on attacks. His field of view was restricted, and frost could build up on the canopy at high altitudes, making visibility a challenge. Midway down the fuselage, the dorsal turret, often a Fraser-Nash FN-50, featured two more .303s. The mid-upper gunner sat exposed under a plexiglass bubble, scanning the skies for approaching threats. Without heating, freezing temperatures made long missions brutal. The most vulnerable position was the rear turret, a Fraser-Nash FN-20 or FN-120, armed with four .303 Brownings. The tail gunner sat alone, separated from the crew, encased in a glass dome with a 360-degree view. With no armor and little warning of enemy attacks, he was often the first and last line of defense. The radio operator. Communication was the lifeline of a mission, and the radio operator ensured the crew stayed connected with the base and other bombers in the squadron. But his job came with a haunting ritual, writing a goodbye letter before every mission. One operator recalled how, before each flight, he would pen a farewell to his loved ones, never knowing if it would be his last. Many airmen did the same, stuffing letters into their pockets or leaving them with ground crew in case they didn't return. This was the brutal reality of war. Every time they climbed into the Lancaster, they knew it might be a one-way trip. The Lancaster sacrifice, losses, and legacy. The Avro Lancaster was a powerhouse of the skies, but wasn't indestructible. A single hit to an engine could mean losing power mid-flight, forcing crews to make difficult choices. Many pilots attempted emergency landings in enemy-occupied territory, while others had no choice but to ditch their aircraft in freezing waters where survival was uncertain. Even when damage was manageable, limping back to base with fuel leaks, shattered fuselages, and failing engines was a desperate battle against time. More than half of all bomber crews never made it home, their missions turning into one-way flights into the unknown. With each operation, crews knew the odds were stacked against them, yet they climbed aboard anyway. Some returned to find empty bunks where friends once slept, a grim reminder of the war's relentless toll. The sheer bravery of these airmen remains one of the war's most harrowing stories. For many Lancaster crews, the war ended not in victory, but in sacrifice. Yet their contributions helped pave the way for peace. Their stories live on, not just in history books, but in the echoes of their bravery that still inspire generations today. The Lancaster was more than a machine. It symbolized resilience, duty, and the unbreakable spirit of those who flew it. From its crucial role in precision bombing to the harrowing realities its crew faced, including constant threats from enemy fire and the unrelenting physical and mental toll, it embodied both the best and worst of war. Despite the immense risks and staggering survival rates, the Lancaster played a pivotal role in shortening World War II. The courage of its crews continued to inspire, serving as a potent reminder that true victory often comes at a heavy cost. Will we ever fully understand the price of freedom? Thank you for joining us in uncovering the haunting legacy of the Avro Lancaster. If you enjoy this story, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more fascinating tales of aviation history. And don't forget to check out these other videos for more untold stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.